The International Court of Justice ordered Israel to halt its offensive in the southern Gaza city of Rafah. In Argentina, the conflict in the province of Misiones escalates as security forces repressed a demonstration of teachers and health personnel in front of the provincial legislature. And Russian authorities assure that the main intelligence directorate of Ukrainian Ministry of Defense was heavily involved in the attack against the Crocus City Hall on March 22nd. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos, and from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba, we begin with the news. Judges at the top United Nations Court ordered Israel to halt its offensive in the southern Gaza city of Rafah. The order was announced on Friday at a hearing regarding the case brought by South Africa accusing Israel of genocide. The UN top court alleged immense risk to the Palestinian population to back its decision. This comes after South Africa requested extra provisional measures at a hearing held last week, which concerned in particular the critical situation faced by Palestinians in Rafah, the southernmost city in Gaza, where 1.4 million Palestinians had taken refuge and was now being targeted by the Israeli army. In response to this, Judge Nawaf Salam indicated Israel should halt their actions immediately.
The court considered that, in conformity with its obligations under the Genocide Convention, Israel must immediately halt its military offensive and any other action in the Rafah governorate which may inflict on the Palestinian group in Gaza conditions of life that could bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part.
In this context, in Palestine, the Israeli occupation army maintains an intense siege in Gaza, while health authorities warn of an impending humanitarian catastrophe. Hospital officials said that 15 were killed, including 3 women, when an Israeli strike hit an aid warehouse where displaced people had taken refuge in the town of Deir al-Balah in central Gaza. Several deaths and injured were also reported after bombardments in Jabalia and different neighborhoods also in Gaza City. Meanwhile, Palestinian health authorities warned of a deepening humanitarian catastrophe and announced that Israel is deliberately leaving hospitals in the Gaza Strip out of service. In this regard, the director of the Al-Aqsa Hospital said on Friday that the hospital was left without power after running out of fuel as a result of the Israeli blockade.
The management of Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital warns of an imminent humanitarian and health catastrophe unless the hospital is supplied with fuel in the coming hours. The hospital management considers this a pressure on the medical staff and the health sector, which is already depleted, to put the hospitals in the Gaza Strip completely out of service.
And the Palestinian cause is the central cause of the Syrian government and people who, despite all the pressures, claim to spare no efforts in defending the legitimate right of their Palestinian brothers, of which he stands out the establishment of an independent Palestinian state and the release of Palestinian prisoners. Let's see.
The Damascus branch of the Syrian Bar Association organized a conference entitled The Palestinian State and Future Prospects in International Law. A colloquium that is part of a legal management carried out by Syrian lawyers in the international arena to motivate the worldwide recognition of an independent Palestinian state that enjoys full membership in the United Nations General Assembly and other international forums.
There is
a global consensus on the establishment of a Palestinian state, but the United States, in support of the Israeli occupation entity, stands against this global consensus, and yet the right will be recovered by its true owners, and much they do. The occupied lands will be liberated and recovered by their Palestinian owners, and we will witness the presence of the State of Palestine as member state in all international forums.
In parallel, dozens
of Palestinians and Syrians denounced in front of the headquarters of the International Committee of the Red Cross in Damascus the inhuman Israeli practices against Palestinian prisoners, regretted the loss of the Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi as one of the main defenders of rights of these detainees, and praised the battle being waged by resistance fighters in Gaza to free their kidnapped brothers in occupation prisons.
We regret the loss of the great leader Raisi, who at the head of the Islamic Republic of Iran always defended our rights, including the release of Palestinian prisoners in occupation prisons, and we trust that the Iranian people will have hundreds of leaders who will undoubtedly follow the path of President Raisi in defense of the just causes of the peoples of the world, in particular our cause.
There are dozens of children of our people kidnapped in Zionist prisons, whose release is among the main objectives of the Operation Flood of Al-Aqsa that was unleashed in response to the relentless Israeli aggression against the Palestinian people, and thanks to this operation, many Israelis were held hostage and exchanged for our prisoners who suffered years ago in the occupation prison.
The activities taking place in Syria in defense of the rights of the Palestinian people coincided with the strong support shown for the just Palestinian cause at the funeral ceremonies of President Ebrahim Raisi and his comrades in Iran. Two pillars of the axis of resistance which, despite all the adversities, do not give up their firm support for the Palestinians in their struggle for the liberation of their occupied land.
In Germany, police evicted pro-Palestinian activists who had been occupying different areas of the Humboldt University campus since Wednesday. The operation took place after the 6 p.m. ultimatum that the university's rector, Julia von Blumenthal, had given the students expired. Several demonstrators were forcibly removed by police, while others withdrew voluntarily. In a statement, activists from the Berlin Student Coalition group accused Israel of genocide and claimed that their action intended to demonstrate their unconditional solidarity with the Palestinian people. In Iran, the body of martyr President Ebrahim Raisi was buried in the mausoleum of Imam, the HIT Imam in Mashhad, northeastern Iran. From the early hours of Thursday, Iranian citizens in Mashhad took to the streets to bid farewell to their president, that along with his chancellor, his foreign minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian, and other colleagues in a helicopter crash on Sunday 19th in the northwestern province of East Azerbaijan. According to the Mashhad City Hall, more than 3 million people have participated in the ceremony to say the last farewell to the leader. We stay in Iran as the General Staff of the Armed Forces published the preliminary report of the Supreme Committee in charge of investigating the dimensions and causes of the crash of the helicopter carrying the President, Ebrahim Raisi, and his companions. The report stated that a significant amount of information had been gathered from the various specialized technicals and general fields that could be involved in the accident. However, investigations need more time to express a definitive opinion. For now, it can be determined that the helicopter continued on the planned route and did not depart from the designated flight path. It also detailed that approximately a minute and a half before the accident, the pilot of the crashed helicopter communicated with the other two helicopters of the flight group. On the other hand, it is known that the documents will reach the audience and the opinion of the people of Iran in the next announcement once the investigative work has been completed. And the report also detailed that no traces of bullet damage or anything similar were observed in the wreckage of the helicopter, and that it caught fire after crashing into a cliff. On the day of the crash, the search actions continued until 5 in the morning due to the crashed area's dense fog and cold weather, and ended after the helicopter crash site was found through Iranian drones, and then the rescue teams went to the site. In turn, the report stated that no suspicious points were detected in the helicopter crew's communications and dialogues with the control tower. During the search efforts, a large part of the documents and artifacts related to the accident were collected. However, it will require more time to study them in depth. Now let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Argentina, the conflict in the province of Misiones escalates. On Thursday, security forces repressed a demonstration of teachers and health personnel in front of the provincial legislature. The demonstrators were repressed with batons, tear gas, and rubber bullets as they tried to enter the legislature, hoping to be heard by the deputies in their demand of a 100% salary increase. After the clashes, the demonstrators decided to protest in front of the house of the governor, Hugo Pasalacqua. After a week of protests initiated by the police, roadblocks and encampments are maintained at different points of the province, and more sectors are joining in their struggle for higher salaries after the workers' purchasing power plummeted in the country.
Today, I looked at the police. I could not believe it. I could not. How dangerous can the people's claim be? At the House of the People, that is the Chamber of Deputies. And none of the deputies came out to stand by the people. That hurts too. And it hurts because they seem to lose direction. They lose their sensibility. They forget about the people.
The Colombian Congress approved an investment agreement with Venezuela to provide a legal tool to regulate and promote investments between both nations. The ruling serves as a regulatory framework to promote investments between both countries and provides minimum guarantees for direct investment. It also provides for equal treatment between Venezuelan and Colombian nationals under the protection of the national treatment standards, thus maintaining the balance between potential foreign and Colombian investors. In other news, the President of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, assured that the trial against Ecuador is not yet over after the decision of the International Court of Justice not to impose precautionary measures for the assault on the embassy in Quito. The Mexican president indicated that the provisional measures proposed in the International Court were with the purpose of protecting the Mexican embassy and the documentation kept in the diplomatic institution. The Mexican head of state also ruled out any possibility of re-establishing dialogue and relations with the administration of Daniel Noboa from Ecuador, stating that the latter violated international law and violated Mexico's sovereignty. President López Obrador also indicated that the case against Ecuador is important to set a precedent so that there is no other violation of international law. This happens after the International Court of Justice announced that it would not issue any provisional measures demanded by Mexico against Ecuador after the assault on its embassy. The court concluded that the circumstances did not require the exercise of its power to take precautionary measures. The International Court also stressed that it considered it necessary to insist on the fundamental importance of the principles of the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. For its part, Mexico requested the court to suspend Ecuador as a member of the United Nations organization, and the Quito guaranteed the full protection and security of the Mexican diplomatic headquarters. The legal consultant Alejandro Celorio Alcántara offered statements on the ICJ ruling on Mexico's request for provisional measures in response to the violent raid by the Ecuadorian police on the Mexican embassy.
The government of Mexico feels very satisfied with today's decision. First and foremost, the judges of the International Court of Justice ratified and expressed that the inviolability of the diplomatic mission is a cornerstone of the relations between countries. This is of the utmost importance for Mexico, for Ecuador, for the world entire, recognizing that there's no exceptions to inviolability.
The legal consultant also announced that with this decision, the Mexican embassy will not be violated again.
Even though the provisional measures that the government of Mexico requested weren't granted, this is a court and we presented our arguments and the judges had their considerations. We're reading with close attention what some judges had to say about the opinion, even concurring, they had their specifics. Just to say that now Mexico has a binding obligation on Ecuador to respect our embassy. That means that we can resort on Ecuador's not only ability, but assurances and legal obligations before the court to know that our embassy won't be violated again. In a nutshell, Mexico won today because the inviolability of the locals is recognized as a cornerstone of international law and diplomatic relations, and secondly, because Ecuador is now under its obligation not to violate our embassy again.
We have a final short break coming up, but before, we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and also share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the south. The director of the Federal Security Service of Russia, Alexander Bortnikov, assured that the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine was heavily involved in the attack against the Crocus city hall on March 22nd. The official stated that Kiev's aim was to use religious and national factors to damage Moscow's relations with the member countries of the Community of States. Bortnikov also said that the attack that killed 145 people was financed and coordinated by members of the Islamic State affiliated in Afghanistan, known as ISIS Khorasan. The Russian director also added that the investigation of the case is continuing and promised that all the circumstances of the crime would be clarified and that none of the perpetrators would escape punishment. Meanwhile, in Belarus, the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, met with his counterpart, Alexander Lukashenko, after arriving in Minsk. The president had a brief talk at the airport in Minsk, where the Belarusian leader greeted his Russian counterpart before holding bilateral dialogues. According to a statement issued by the Kremlin during their talks, the presidents were expected to discuss further enhancement of the partnership, closer integration with the aim of strengthening relations at the international level. They were also expected to address key issues for the development of their bilateral ties and joint projects in trade and economy.
Our colleagues have done a lot recently with their direct involvement and support. We will talk about all of this today and tomorrow, including the security issues, to which you are constantly paying great attention. This is also something to talk about. Everything is going well and stable for us. Let's talk, of course, about the drills, about the second phase of the drills. This is connected with the direct participation of our Belarusian friends and colleagues in the military sphere.
For his part, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko welcomed the arrival in Minsk of the Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin.
I welcome you to the Belarusian land, which is your home. The Belarusian people will be very glad to know that you have come to us. After the elections, this is one of your first visits after the People's Republic of China, our friends.
In other news, on Thursday, U.S. President Joe Biden ruled out sending U.S. soldiers to Haiti, although he assured that he would provide financial and logistical support to the international mission led by Kenya. Biden gave this information during a press conference with his Kenyan counterpart, William Ruto, who was received with the full honors in the first state visit of an African leader to Washington since 2008. The president of the country that has 173,000 U.S. troops deployed around the world in over 250 military bases asserted that deploying troops in the Western Hemisphere was quote-unquote complex and could easily be misunderstood.
We concluded that for the United States to deploy forces in the hemisphere just raises all kinds of questions that can be easily misrepresented about what we're trying to do and be able to be used by those who disagree with us and against the interest of Haiti and the United States. So we set out to find a partner or partners who would lead that effort that we would participate in, not with American forces, but with supplies and making sure they had what they needed. And so, I'm very grateful to President Ruto's leadership here, multinational effort, but Kenya's willingness to really lead this matters. You're not the only country, but you're leading this effort. And there's going to be U.S. forces, none on the ground, but we're going to supply logistics, intelligence, and equipment.
Like